Well, I'm going to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're recording today's show. We are celebrating the Labor Day weekend, and also it just so happens to be my birthday, but we're going to record anyway. We want to make sure that we got you guys a show out. So if you guys would do us a huge favor, like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you find anything useful out of anything that we share today, we greatly would appreciate it. It helps us grow the audience and helps us get into a broader algorithm for YouTube. So if you would do that for us, we would greatly appreciate that. And today, without any further ado, we have our resident insurance specialist with us, joining us, Mr. Tommy Rook. But before we bring Tommy on, let me go ahead and get my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, in. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing fantastic. Happy birthday there, bro.
I appreciate it. We had a time last night, as they say, but
well, ladies and gentlemen, we decided to pre-record this show because we had an opportunity here this morning to bring our good friend Tommy Rook, who is a real industry veteran. Tommy's probably been around the industry for about 60 years. His dad, Merle, ran a truck line out of Fort Myers, and Tommy's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and lend a hand, and he's certainly done that this time as far as some of the fraud that's going around. Tommy heard about it and did what he could from his end, and I want to hear more about it. So with no further ado, let's bring on our good friend and our guest today, Tommy Rook. Tom?
Here we go.
Hey, brothers. Glad to see you guys. I'm glad that we're up. I'm sure that I fixed my hair. I was wondering what happened year or two, but anyway.
I got a little carried away with the brush last night.
At least mine's hanging in there, which for my age, that means a lot here, right?
Tommy, I had less hair than you when I was in high school.
I had gray hair since I was in high school, so you know where we are.
Yeah, but you were 48 in high school.
Yeah, I just going to, Chuck, you and I talked earlier in the week, but Rico, I had an email from an agent last week that said, Tommy, I've had 4 cases in the last month of somebody stealing our insured's DOT number. One case was a claim that was had, a crash that was had, that was reported directly to the insurance company.
Wow.
One case was they even used the public data to try to buy insurance.
Wow.
One case they had 3 vehicles inspected and the insured got canceled because they had a policy that requires the vehicle to be specified. And insurance companies, if the audience doesn't know this, tracks the vehicles being inspected under their number. And the fourth one they used their insurance DOT number to get a load and haul the load and got the revenue from it versus the insured. So this is a real problem. You know what it takes to steal a DOT number? It takes a cardboard call, some cardboard, piece of tape on the side of the vehicle, and a crayon to put a DOT number, and somebody to dummy up a 1-page lease. That's all it takes. And nobody pays attention to those things. Obviously, in these cases, they're more professional that they actually had a placard there that they made up, and it had a way to stick it on here. But the officers don't check this when there's inspection. And the problem you have, most of these people are, in our opinion, and we haven't tracked down who was stealing the number. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But what happens is that this is someone, in my opinion, that can't operate on their own, either because they've had their CSA scores blow up already, they can't buy insurance, some reason here, so they try a shortcut to steal somebody else. The problem is, it's not the people in the orange trucks that's getting DOT numbers stolen, or people with U.S. FedEx or something on the side there. It's a smaller trucker with 3 or 4 or 5 trucks that don't track their DOT numbers. They don't track their inspections. They just go on, try to get a load and function those things. And this is really a problem, Rico. I'm working with someone to have a solution to this, and we'll talk about that later. But then what happens is that in the 4th case, or the worst case in this, is if your insurer doesn't track it 4 or 5 times, this happens, and they're not. If they have a bad CSA score today, when they steal another DOT number, don't you think they're still going to do sound violations?
Right.
And
Right.
now they're on the screening program from Carrier 411 and overhaul and those things. Now they can't get a load.
Right.
Because now they're are blacklisted on these
Blacklisted.
things.
Sure.
And so it's just so rampant. And we can talk before the class is over about the double brokerage too. Chuck, you talked some about that on the radio show the other day. We can talk more about the fraud and that. And the third thing we might want to talk about is a new provision that the FMCSA has come out to try to have the application process to fight some of this fraud. I've been in touch with FMCSA on that, and I got to know a little bit about that. But this is important. So the number one rule is motor carrier, small motor carrier, you got to check your DOT numbers every day almost, at least weekly. Now, Rico, we put a program together where we can we'll send the motor carrier their DOT scores, CSA scores on a monthly basis. You know, it changed monthly.
Right.
And then we'll send them a letter, an email, the day a crash or an inspection is put in the system with the VIN numbers of the trucks that got inspected and the violations and where they happened. And it costs less than a half a tank full of gas a year.
Okay.
If they register us. All we need is their DOT number.
Okay, and this will help them stay aware and on top of that, make it conscious to them on a monthly basis as to what's going on.
So they don't need to go in they need to go in their own portal and all and change things out when there's something happening, but they don't have to think about doing it every day. You file every time it happens. This part. And Chuck, sometimes it happens where they've got an operator, a driver that doesn't report the violations. If they don't, now the FMCSA knocks on the door and the penalties don't pay the penalties. So this will tell them these things, and it's done automatically. It's going to be done seamless. That way, we even give Rates and Lanes credit for anybody who signs up through Rates and Lanes on that on part of, and a special deal. It'll depends on how many trucks they got. That varies a little bit in the cost, but it's a one-time deal. It's automatically done. They don't have to do anything other than open the email. They have some ability, either their iPad, their phone, their computer, to check it every day.
Tommy, what happens if a carrier, unbeknownst to him, finds out that somebody stole his or her DOT number and has racked up some fines or whatever? And they find out about it. It may have happened, today is Monday, so it may have happened last Thursday. So they find out that there's a bunch of charges pending against them, which they have nothing to do about. How can they fight that to get that removed from their record?
We have two things to help them in this program. The first thing is they need a data queue it. They can go in a data queue and it says it's not ours. And this alerts the system here. And we've got that written out. But we also got a lawyer, the law firm you're familiar with, Chuck, Rob Mosley's law firm, who's willing to help the insured fight it when it happens at a more than reasonable cost. I mean, their plan is if all they do is show them how to do it, there's not much charge on it if they have to go and intercede it themselves, but they need to do it now. The thing that I would recommend them doing, because what the report shows is a DOT officer who made the inspection, his badge number, and the first thing I would do is call him and say that wasn't my truck and see if they can then correct it before it really gets involved in the system, because this will be even quicker than the data queue, but they need to do some action.
Okay, now let me ask you a question on this. So somebody goes and steals a DOT number and then goes out and commits violations, and he gets stopped by a state trooper or whoever, a DOT officer. Is that interaction usually videotaped? So we get the photo of the driver's face that was charged, so we know who the culprit is?
No. The only thing would happen if the officer, the only way the insured can prove it's not there is share with the officer their ELD information, where they were located at the time, to show that they were not in that location, or have video doing that. There'd be nothing on the officer. The cameras that you see at the police officer that mandated are not required for DOT officers because they're not involving criminal actions, they're not involving arrest, they're not involving those kind of things, Chuck. So the only time there would be some information involved in it, and again, it wouldn't be our insurance video because they're not there. It's not them. So we can go back to the officer. There'd be no way. All they could prove is they had on the ELD information, they had no vehicles in that location or never have been. And here are all our vehicles that happened.
What if they have an exemption from ELDs and don't have the ELDs?
Well, Rico, that's a little harder to prove. Then that doesn't happen too. So, I'm just telling you the option. And this is the thing: if they do not have ELDs, if they don't have them yet, Rico, in today's marketplace, it's a negative from an insurance company standpoint for two reasons. They're using older equipment and what they're trying to hide. This is the part of it. But they'll have to come up with some way. They can go in and the system we can go in and look at that vehicle VIN number that caused a crash and see whose else DOT number that VIN number operated under. This would also help them. Was not us.
Okay.
So there's ways to fight it once it's happened. But the problem I'm having, Rico, on this, you're a small trucker. How many vehicles we got, Rico?
I just got 2.
How often you go and check your CSA scores?
Probably not as often as I should, to be honest with you. And that's the crazy
once a
thing.
month, it changes once a month. And the other thing about it, Rico, is the number one thing the insurance companies look at is your CSA scores. We talked
a little while ago, Tommy. Someone tried to get me with a phishing scam that looked very official it looked like it came directly from the Department of Transportation and FMCSA. It was on there kind of like a boilerplate letterhead and everything. But they were asking, the thing that drew my antennas went up was when they was asking for my DOT PIN number and my social security number. I was like, they should never need that type of information.
Absolutely not. In fact, if the FMCSA put a memo out to everybody that we don't do that, and we never ask for PIN number. We'll never ask for social security numbers through any communication with us, other than when they set the original applications up, the stuff that's involved there. Absolutely, and they set that out. And this again, these scams, these phishing scams, Rico, are just how to steal it, and
they're good.
The vulnerable. And as Chuck mentioned, my father's a trucker. I'm very sensitive to the smaller truckers who are just out here trying to make a living. They don't have the time, the hurry to pay the details. But now with all this technology out there, the details become more important. So,
the devil's in the details. And you know what? If you didn't take the time before, you better damn well take it now if you're going to stay in business, because we're plagued with all of this fraud. It's like years ago, you hear people talk, well, I don't, my grandparents never locked their doors. Today, the grandchildren of those grandparents that never locked their doors have a gate in front of their house, have their house locked, an alarm, a video, and probably have a great big dog behind the door.
It's a whole world different. And the thing that even happens in this, and again, once you get on the blacklist of the vending companies, and there's 3 or 4 of those for shippers, you don't get off of that.
Right.
And the problem is, if when this person picked up the DOT number from this broker under a false DOT number and then didn't deliver it because they stole the load.
Right.
Now, guess what? That broker is going to report to these services the DOT number, not the VIN of the vehicle number. So now they're on the list, and those people you don't change. I mean, they just they're, as you know, there's a lot of, I think Hank and I had some discussion this last week on this part of it about they don't change these kind of things.
Here. So they basically
ruin
an innocent company, gets ruined.
Yeah. Right.
And goes out and potentially puts them out of business.
Exactly right. So
a great big steel company is not going to go and fight for one of their carriers that has one truck that they use because the guy had some bad luck. They're not going to bother. They're going on to the next one, which is really sad. So, we are living in a different world today, and we have to
Yeah, I
get used
mean,
to it.
the thing I talk about is that the shippers and brokers want to depend on somebody that can take care of their customer from a broker standpoint, their cargo from a shipper standpoint, and they're worried about being bought in a lawsuit. And so they're reluctant to use smaller motor carriers, and to protect themselves when they do that, they then use these vending services just as a shortcut to see who's legitimate in this area. And those
Right.
vending companies now are becoming the gatekeepers for loads, even the ones that are posted on the load boards. And this is a real problem because those people don't want to hear anything, and a broker can actually abuse a smaller trucker just because they got ticked off at him for some reason, not even that they didn't even do anything wrong. This part of it, maybe they just few minutes late, or the example I used in the thing is that the trucker got there on time, but there's a slot there, and they wouldn't let him come in the slot because they delayed that. But then the shipper, because the trucker was a little fusty with the trucker and said, "Look, I can't unload. I've got to go. I got another load to take here." Now that broker reported to this vending service about this trucker being bad, and now they're on the blacklist.
Yeah, there's got to be two sides to the story in order for them to be blacklisted.
And they have
it's
no,
like,
it's
like a lot of things today. They're one-sided. We have there's vetting or there are reporting services for employees where an employee can leave a good or a bad remark about the people they work for. Now, if somebody was let go from a position because they were incompetent or they couldn't keep up or they had a problem, they're never going to leave a good review. And in a lot of these services, these sites, there's no two sides. They're all one-sided, and you have that for restaurants. So you go to a restaurant and you're rude to the server, or you just had a bad server that night and you leave a horrible review. That really hurts that business. And there's no rebuttal opportunity for the owner of that restaurant to say, well, hold on a second. The diner that said we were awful, he came in, he was drunk, and he was abusive to the server. And it's the same sort of thing.
Right.
With a lot of these services we've come up with, they are so one-sided that we need two sides to a story in order for it to be a story.
But the trucking industry is even worse than that, and that is because of lawyers.
Yes.
So there is a fear of the broker and the shipper that if they don't select the proper trucker with a safety record, now they might be held up in court for negligent entrustment, giving a load or using someone who's not. Now we're fighting those things fairly successfully in court, but this is the problem that you have involved so there's even more problem you have in this area. And so it's just that they've got to keep up with their crashes, their inspections, and their CSA scores to be successful in this marketplace. So this is why, Rico, we came up with a system that just easily does that for them and automatically sends it to them, so they know that that when something happens, that they know they got to do something about it. Here, if their scores are going up, then they need to find out why their scores are going up. 2 or 3 units, 5-unit operation. What truck is causing the problems with my scores? What do I need to do with that driver? So there's a plan going back to the insurance agent. Now, what we really roll this out to, Rico, is to the insurance agents. We're talking to insurance agents about providing it to their insureds, and the agencies provide it here. But I do have some contact with you and Road Dog Radio Show, you and Chuck, that we can make it available directly to the motor carrier through the same services.
That's it's very, very interesting, and I'm disappointed because there seems to be, we talked about this a little bit last week with Hank, and I'm really disappointed that there has not been more of a concerted effort from our government officials to really try to help crack down on the amount of fraud that's taking place, because it's getting to a point now to where it's really hurting. It's hurting commerce altogether, and it's really hurting a lot of people. I'm thinking that this should be the function of government. We talk about a lot of things that government shouldn't do, but I think that this is one of the things that definitely falls under the preview of what government should step in and try to at least help prosecute and go after some of this stuff to try to stamp it down or stomp it out, so to speak.
Rico, amen. But let me tell you the problem for what we're talking about. They're focusing on the loads that are being stolen. They're focusing on that. The only person who's hurt there is just a small little trucker who didn't have time to take care of his own business or her own business.
I don't even think they're focusing on the loads that's being
No,
stolen.
I mean the venting of bad actors is that the broker's bad and the trucker's bad from a stealing of a load standpoint. You know, they vested over $1 million into the law to try to fight brokerage, double brokerage, and they're interested in that because now cargo's getting stolen. And now you got people involved, shippers and brokers are involved in it, insurance companies involved in it because they're paying money out. Either one of the two. They're losing money or the insurance companies are paying the money or they're fighting the cases. Well, what we're talking about here that can affect the motor carrier's income, can affect the motor carrier's operation is just between their business policy or plan. They could take this up. Nobody cares about what we're talking about, stealing somebody's DOT number, except the motor carrier, because it's their livelihood here and nobody's ever going to protect them from what we're talking about here. I mean, you could say, and you have you ever been inspected, Rico?
Yes.
Now, what do they ask you for? They ask you for the shipping documents?
Shipping document. They usually, of course, your driver's license, shipping documents. You have to email them your ELD information. They're going to want to see
and
your
insurance. Your insurance card.
Yeah, all that information, the cab card, everything.
Yeah, they don't ask though about the DOT number and go check beyond that. They trust that part of it. If you're a leased operator, they might ask you or a copy of your lease.
Right.
So this is all. So the only way you would ever protect this is that every time a truck gets inspected, the DOT officer verifies that it's a legitimate lease between the parties because the vehicle is not owned by the person's DOT number, entity whose DOT number on the side. But they don't have time. They're never going to do that part. That's the only way you would ever police this.
Because all they're checking on is safety of the truck. That's what they're really checking on
that truck that day.
Yeah, they've given up. They used to check us out quite a bit on form and manner. If you remember back in the old days, they would look at your paper log. Oh, Rico, you put a line here where you should have had one here. You're in big trouble, buddy. That's going to cost you, $320 for putting the line here because you're really tired and made a mistake. And now they don't worry about any of that. It's just truck safety. How are your brakes? How are your airlines? They're more worried about a chafed airline that you can't see at the bottom of your, the bottom of your cab. That's what they're interested in. And I think what's happening here is you've got the Department of Transportation, you got FMCSA, you've got the Department of Justice, who should really be handling this because it's fraud. And nobody out of those three agencies wants to take on the costs of policing this because it's huge. And I said to Hank last week, well, if we have to, let's charge everybody that has a DOT number, charge them $100 a year, and that goes into a fund to police.
Well,
how does that work?
As you know, the suggestion that Hank has in this vending service is make $1,000 for an application. And every other year when you do 150, you could have $300, $400 every time you up your 150 information to pay for the cost of verifying the information on the 150. And then his suggestion to outsource that. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. I do know that they are going to ask this new registration system to fight fraud. They are going to outsource that, and it's going to require anybody who is making a new application to prove that they have a U.S. driver's license, a U.S. visit, and the location of the business is a legitimate business location. They're still doing right now. The second step of that is they're also going to use that same venting process every time they update the 150 form. So this is all the government's doing today to fight the fraud, to make sure the people who has the DOT numbers are legitimate businesses and legitimate people. That's what all they can really think they can do with it to fight the fraud.
Sounds like it's not enough. It sounds like you're trying to put a tiny Band-Aid on a major heart attack.
I totally agree with you on that, Chuck, but I don't know what else they can do. They are trying to automate the services so that, and again, outsource it, very similar to the clear process when you go through for security at the airport. They're using that kind of a venting situation to verify that. But at least it's doing something, Chuck. And
so in the case,
it's not enough. First of all, we have an antiquated law stating that if it comes out of the earth, it's an exempt commodity. Okay, that comes from back in the day when your daddy started trucking, which is probably 70 or 80 years ago. So that's antiquated. I think anybody that hauls freight, I don't care whether it's apples that come off a tree or something comes off a port or out of a factory, needs a DOT number. And I think we've got to do some serious vetting because if I am not mistaken, we are something about 72 hours away at all times from food security or food insecurity.
Right. So, Chuck, let me correct one step you have here. An exempt hauler does have to have a DOT number.
Oh, they do. Okay.
I have to have an MC number requiring a filing. But also a part of this new registration system is they're going to get rid of the MC numbers.
I heard that.
Have a DOT number. This will require an exempt hauler then to have an insurance filing, which is one, and this, I don't like it, but this is a little help. So now the insurance company will be part of the venting services that when they make a filing, they're making on a legitimate person. You follow what I'm saying? So
yeah.
If the exempt hauler has a filing, I don't like the idea to have the insurance companies. I mean, part of even the discussion about speed limiters and speed and all that. Well, the insurance carriers will vent some of that. Well, I don't like this idea. You shouldn't have the insurance companies venting. Even the new brokerage bond situation, where they're saying that if you make a claim against your brokerage bond, now the bonding company needs to verify and get additional security or report that. To have the insurance industry to have something to do with who's a legitimate broker, who's a legitimate trucker is just out of bounds, in my opinion. However, that is a part of the vending program because if you're a broker, you got to have a $75,000 bond. And if you are a motor carrier, even exempt motor carrier, but now only the regulated motor carriers hauling the processed goods, you've got to have $750,000 worth of coverages. So, and they have to have the insurance carriers choose who to provide those insurance proof of coverages to. And so there is a sense of venting in that area.
I just have to shake my head at one thing. That $75,000 bond for brokers is nonsense because $75,000, although it's a lot of money, it's not when one of these brokers decides to close his doors. That hardly covers any of the outstanding bills.
Chuck, it used to be $10,000 until 4 years ago.
I know.
Not 21 up to $775,000. Yeah,
still, when you look at a company like Convoy that has gone out in the last 6 months or so, how many millions and millions of dollars, truckers were ripped off for.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
that's in the case of the situation where the DOT number was, where they stole the DOT number and had the crash. Tommy, do you whatever came of that, or do you is it still going on, or do you have any information?
Yeah. When the insurance carrier got the claim, and they did directly to the insurance carrier. As you know, that if you have an insurance filing, you can go in and find out what insurance company made the filing and the address of the person who made it, because because you have the processing agent, and everybody has to have a processing agent. So you can make a claim against the DOT, hold of the DOT number by sending the paper to the processing agent, who then sends it to the insurance company who's on file. And so what their insurance company says, we know it's not yours, we're going to fight it. And so in this case, hopefully, and I haven't come I'm going to follow up. In fact, I got a call with the agent tomorrow to follow up on this email that he wrote me last week that precipitated our call here today. If you have an accident, there is a police report.
Right.
And that police report shows two things. It shows who owns the vehicle and who the driver was. So hopefully this insurance carrier is going to be able to go get a copy of the police report and then take action against that driver and that owner of that vehicle. So there is some remedy in that case. But again, the insurance company's going to have to, it takes money not to do this. They don't need a lawyer to do this, but it still is a cost to the industry, because every time the insurance company has to spend money, they have to recoup it. They do that by the rates they charge you, Rico.
Yeah, nobody works for free except truckers.
I was fixing to say.
Nobody does anything for free except truckers. And that's got to stop.
Rico, I don't know if we do that. Let me give you the link to access what we're talking about, okay?
Sure.
It's safeguardtrucking.net.
Safeguardtrucking.net. Let me see here.
Now, Tommy, who's behind Safeguard? Is there insurance companies or
no? Me and a vending service who already provides information to the insurance industry.
Okay, good.
It's something I came up with, mainly, Chuck, because retail agents. I think the retail agents need to offer this. If they don't, then there's a way for the trucker to get it direct. Just
Right.
because to help the agent to offer more than a policy, and to help the trucker take care of the things that the most important thing for them is their insurance. And that has to do with their CSA scores and the people still the DOT number, to give them some ability to fight this.
Okay. So let's just, if a trucker using Safeguard gets a write-up at a scale, how long does it take until the owner of that DOT number gets an email going, you got a write-up at West Hawk scale or whatever?
Okay. In today's marketplace, 90% of the information is put in the minute that the officer writes it up.
Okay.
And in that case, they'll get an email that day.
Okay.
Same thing with crash. There's a few, the old paperwork where they take it back to the office and put it in the system. Most of them now are hooked up directly there. And I don't know many that are not part of the DOT vending services, Rico and Chuck, that don't do it immediately. Once they send and make a copy, give it to the trucker, that's then into the system. And so the company that's doing this with me, they pay to access the FMCSA's service on every day. So anything put in today they'll get an email about it no later than tomorrow morning.
Okay, so if the turnaround is that quickly, that gives the small trucker a real good opportunity to go to his brokers, his customers, and say, listen, you're going to see something on there. We were defrauded, and we're fixing this.
Right.
Don't worry, we know
Right.
about it.
And it also gives them time again to find out the officer, because you know who sent it there, and get his phone number or her phone number and say, look, it wasn't me. Can we stop it now before it gets a big part of the system?
Okay, so if that happens, you find out, I'm going to use Rico as an example.
I love to use it as an example. Okay.
Okay. Rico's at home today. He's off duty, and he looks at his phone. He goes, you just got a write up in Rhode Island. So he knows right away there's a problem. How fast can he turn things around? He said he get data. So he's been told by the service, by Safeguard, that there's a problem. He's got to get hold of your lawyer, Mr. Mosley, or somebody to take that off his record. How fast can everything be expunged?
Chuck, that's the problem. It is a slow process. This is why I recommend them to go when it happens to go and try to, and then immediately they could call Rob Mosley and he would call the officer who did the inspection and stop it now. And if that officer then says, you're right, it's wrong, that you weren't there, here's the data, you weren't there, then they can correct the system right now. If it goes through and doesn't do that, then you got to go through the data queue process, which could take a month or so.
So, okay. And what has been your experience with how is the turnaround? Most, if somebody can catch it right away, it sounds like this is almost as a necessity as using diesel fuel conditioner in the winter. It sounds like this is something you've got to have if you're going to be in business, and you're not, you don't have 10,000 orange trucks.
That's the problem I have, and the vulnerable people. You know this, Rico. You have 2 trucks.
Yes.
Who drives your second truck?
No one right now.
Who would normally drive it? Somebody you know personally, you'd vent?
Yeah, we would hire someone. We go through the whole hiring process.
I know that. My point is you'll know that person. But once you get 5 trucks, you don't know them. Once you get 20 trucks, you got somebody in your back office checking it. So the people that are most vulnerable, in my opinion, people with more than 4 or 5 trucks, but don't have 20 trucks. Because
Right.
once you have 20 trucks, you go in the portal every day. I mean, Swift, this, by the way, Chuck, the person I'm using provides this information to Swift already.
Really? They're not doing it on their own?
It's the biggest customer. No, because
Okay.
they don't have to go in the portal. It's done for them. So it saves them time.
Right. Okay.
You follow?
Yeah.
They don't need to take the time to go into their portal and vent all this stuff. They can get an email showing them. And in this case, because they're customers of these people, they even have be able to have the driver's name who had the violation there on their daily reports. It just saves the company time instead of them going in.
Of course, time is money. If there's a problem and they know about it, they can they can fix the problem before there's a real problem.
Right, exactly. So this is who they provide, and they do a better analysis of this. And we're getting beyond the surface here for bigger motor carriers. Like if you're going to hire a new driver, they'll pull the PSP and tell you what this driver's PSP that you're thinking about hiring, how they compare with the rest of your drivers. Are they going to be good or bad on drive? So they have a whole sophisticated system to help truckers just by using technology to automatically compare, vent, share information, this kind of stuff. For the
I got to tell you, you know what? You got both big ears here because I'm listening. I see this thing as a necessity. So tell me that what's a real cost of, so a guy like, I'm going to use Rico. He's right now, he's got 1 truck going up and down the road, looking for another driver for a second truck. What's it going to cost him for that 1 truck to use this service in dollars and cents?
Roughly between $300 to $500 a year.
Oh, okay. And you can
now that's just information. If they have problems, CSA, we have the ability to also help fight that and all, and that would be more costly for if you needed more services, even some loss prevention people to help you straighten things out. And then it gets a little more expensive there when there's problems there. But that's just
if there's no issue for a reporting service is going to be $300 to $500 annually.
Right.
Okay. Now, what about if all of a sudden you find out that you've been the victim of a crime, and fraud is a crime? I have news to the people in Washington. The last time I checked, they put people away for fraud in both the United States and Canada. If a fraud has been has happened here, okay, that's a better word. So you've had a fraud, and now Rico has to fix it, and he's got to call Rob Mosley's office. That's not included. He's got to pay extra to get his name expunged, correct?
Right. The only advantage using Rob is he knows who we are, what we do, and he won't overcharge, and he'll know how to do this. You follow
Okay.
what I'm. That's the only advantage there to fight it. If it's a problem with their drivers and safety, then we also have for a additional cost, additional level, ability with some loss prevention people to help them straighten those things out too. And we have
Yeah.
training, and we have some training videos and information we send to train the drivers thing, but that's a little more costly.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. I think that most of our listeners,
Smaller motor carriers won't need those. If they do it, we have the services, and now you're willing to pay for it because you're now improving it. But just for the information, I mean, it's a no-brainer, Rico, for that kind of money, is it?
I mean, that's a great deal. It's definitely a great deal.
no, I think it's a no-brainer, and I don't think that the boys and girls out there that are operating 1 to 3 trucks probably need anything more than that, because they know who they don't just put
Right.
They don't have the pressure that somebody like a Werner, Swift, or Hunt does, where they've got thousands of trucks parked against the fence, and they've got to hire drivers, and they'll train their own. They're teaching companies as well. Some of them, I know that you mentioned one, Swift. They train a lot of drivers. Whether they come out good drivers or bad drivers, that's pretty subjective, but a matter of opinion. But those people are training drivers. Your small mom and pop carrier, 1 to 3 trucks, they usually hire people they know through their family or their religious affiliation or whatever. They don't just put anybody in a truck because they just cannot afford to.
That's what I'm saying on that part. But the other thing, by the way, this report, Rico, it also highlights if a VIN number that gets inspected has not been inspected before, it'll show you have a new vehicle being inspected. So this, you don't have to go back. Once you have your first vehicles inspected, you follow what I'm saying?
Right.
You're 2. Then if you see a new vehicle inspected, you don't even have to go look at it. That gives you an alert right this minute. Right. So this is a part of it too. And we also, Chuck, a part of this will remind them when they have to update the 150 information every 24 months, when you get within 60 days or 30 days, to remind them so they don't become inactive. So there's some other behind the things that you get also automatically done.
What was that link again, Tommy?
It's safeguardtrucking.net.
Safeguardtrucking.net.
Look it up, or it might be safeguardtruck.net.
Okay, I was checking on it just a few seconds ago, but I put in .com, and a lot of times.
No, it's .net.
There we go. Okay, so we got to make sure that that's corrected, and I'm going to try to make sure that we put a link up in the show notes.
And you see 2 things: the phone number there, but you see that said "Ask Safeguard." That's asking me if you got insurance questions or if you have some other questions, and we'll answer those free.
Good deal. I'm glad we got that distinction out there, so that we can try to put up a link here in the future for people to go and check that out.
And tell your people that if they do this, if they mention your name or rates and lanes, either way, that we've got some special consideration for those people. And I'll let my people know anybody signs up through this is where it's coming from.
All right. Well, thank you. We definitely appreciate that, and you just let the people know. So,
Tom, how long have you had this up and running?
Less than a week. I've been working on it now for 3 months. We've got it in 3 or 4 places, agency directly to the agent. Let me say, I designed this, and we're talking to insurance agents, because my concern is your insurance agent should provide this to you. And so I'm leveraging my relationship with insurance agents to go to them and say, you need to do this with your insurance. And here's how you do it. And some of them are doing it for the insurers and making the insurers pay it. Some of them are bearing the cost here. And when we're doing it, we said, okay, we can do directly with the insurers. And so this is why I also mentioned this, where you want to go directly to the insurer versus through the agent. But my focus now, and we've got it in 2 places, 2 agencies right now. We've got it flushed out. So we know what we're doing. The only thing that we're having now is for the agents to decide what to do. We've got it set up, Chuck and Rico, where this email can be sent out on the agency's name to remind the insured of these kind of things. And so I'm talking to agents now about rolling it out and putting it in place. But the company we're doing with this has been doing this for 30 years. We're just now, and again, they're doing it for larger. They've got thousands of truckers. They're doing some of this stuff already, but they're doing more than just this basic. They give them a whole profile to help the larger truckers vet drivers and do everything else. This is something here that we thought that the smaller motor carrier needed, and I worked with Craig Lack, who's my counterpart on that area, to put this thing together. He helped me start my foundation. He and I have been friends for 20 years to start this. Now that I have given up the foundation responsibility, I need something to do, Chuck. I can't do everything. I got an ex-wife who doesn't want me to do in the house. So I came up with another idea here.
You'll never stop, Tommy. I can't see you, sitting there, collecting old trucks like I do. You really got to get out there and make things happen. You're not going to ever stop.
Well, I want to make it easier for the trucker. As you know, my whole passion in life is make it easier for the trucker to obtain insurance and help the trucker every way I can, basically through the insurance part of it. So I think this is just a step in that right direction. And this is why I roll this out.
You've certainly lived up to that, through, since you and I have been reacquainted in the last 15 years or so. You just keep giving and giving and giving. And it's great to have. We need people like you in this industry, because a lot of times it feels like nobody gives a darn anymore.
Well, the pleasure I've had, Chuck, as you know, is ability to talk about pickles and cucumbers and all the flowers. So I've told them about my father's business, on a weekly basis or monthly basis, teaching all the classes I was all doing. But again, I understand the trucker terminology, and I've been trying to teach that to the insurance industry and tell them, look, if you don't take time to know the trucker, please don't take time to try to buy and sell them insurance. And we got so many agents now because of the dollars, and so simply that a lot of times they don't get the agents who understand their business. This is why we got the ones who've been through our program, the TSA program, the Transportation Insurance Specialist program, that will train them. So those are where you want to go, to these agents who take care of yourself or who understand trucking. And this is a whole different. Go ahead.
Well, no, I've been a huge proponent of having agents that understand our industry.
Well, and just of two sides of things in our time we got left. The two things that I think, actually, I'm going to throw a third one there, that I think can hurt them worse than a nuclear verdict on a bad crash. They have the wrong cargo policy. They didn't take time to tell the agent everything they did, everything they're going to haul, and make sure what they're hauling doesn't have some problems with it, and what are the conditions to have coverage for those policies. And it's very important. Drop and hook is different than reefers. Hauling produce is different than hauling metal shelvings or TVs. That can totally put them out of business. And again, predatory towing is another thing, to make sure they got the towing right, because every policy differs in towing, that part of towing. So that's important also. And again, the last thing involved in insurance is the importance of the CSA scores. I've had underwriters tell me, Rico, when they make a decision who to write, the first thing they decide is, can I defend them in court? And if you have a bad CSA scores or bad drivers, we can't defend you in court. So now you don't get preferred programs. And so this program I just rolled out, Safeguard, will tell you to do that. The one thing I would caution them about is this load theft. Don't know who you're getting the loads from. Don't ever take a load from another trucker. Go directly to the broker and verify that the broker is legitimate. Call them here I mean, just they can change the. You remember Rico, that thing you talking about the federal government where it looked like it came from the federal government?
Right.
Yeah.
Change one little period of, and like you just did, instead of com, they put net.
Right.
Right. And never, once you have the load, take it to another location without verifying that at the location you're sending to is legitimate. Because this is how they tell you, oh, well, we just changed here. Had a funny situation. I was visiting with somebody.
That's a tough one because the blind shipments are so prevalent in the trucking community.
I know. This is what they got to do. I had I was visiting with a person talking about our safeguard program. Said, well, and these are ex-DOT officers who are now selling trucking insurance, which I think is a good combination. But they found a load that got diverted from a major lumber yard to a location, and it was close to them. So they went out to the location, got delivered to, and said, that's not your stuff. And they made them put it back on the truck and take it to where it was supposed to be. But these are things that it's just, technology is great, but it's so easy now to know who you're doing with. When my father knew the people he hauled loads from, or he gave loads to, and they knew him.
Yes.
You don't have that relationship anymore. Or rare.
Yeah, it was said in a someone said, I can't remember exactly where it came from. With all this technology, who needs to steal? Because the technology makes it so easy now. You don't have to go out and actually put a gun in anybody's face.
Or break in anything. You're doing all the technology, and the police aren't going to track that down. This is the problem you have with it. There's just no enforcement here because it's a white collar. You're never going to find the people who did it. So it's harder to be a trucker today because they got so many people who are trying to take dollars out of their pocket from brokers not being fair, and Chuck can defend the broker, the fuel costs going up, everything else. So they just got to be cautious who they're doing business with, Rico, and take care of their own business. Again, Safeguard helps them do that.
Well, Tommy, we appreciate you for coming on with us this morning and talking about this and sharing this information with us. Definitely something that we all need to be looking into to try to help protect ourselves. So we want to thank you again. And before we let you get out of here, one more time, it's safeguardtrucking.net.
Right. Safeguardtrucking.net. Then there's a link there. You can look at me and do other things, but that's the best way right now that I think they can do that there. And if you go Google it, it comes up pretty quick on top of the Google list.
Good deal. Well, we appreciate it again, Tommy. Thank you again from myself and Chuck for taking the time out to come on and share this information with us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great Labor Day, buddy.
Thank you. I'm gonna go work out, Chuck, like you. Not as hard as you, but I'm gonna get my 2 miles in today.
God bless you.
Good deal. Well, Chuck, let the folks know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll get ready to wrap this baby up.
Okay, my friend. If anybody needs to get a hold of me, please just send an email, chucksnow280@outlook.com. Put your phone number on it, and I will call you back and get to you and help you any way I can. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week, and we'll move forward.
All right, good deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to thank you guys for taking the time out to join us here on the Rates and Lanes podcast. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took some time to hang out with us. We are always grateful for you doing so. If you would, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. Leave us a comment if there's something that you'd like to report to us or let us know about. We take all good and bad feedback. We listen to it all. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night. I'm just in the habit of saying that, even though it's morning still.
Catch on the flip-flop. God bless.